Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're discussing Westworld, Season 3, Episode 4, The Mother of Exiles. Starting with the title, which famously denotes the Statue of Liberty, has a few possible links to this episode. Firstly, it's interesting to consider the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France to America, and in this episode, we see Paris completely destroyed in a thermonuclear incident. Because of this Mother of Exiles creed accepting immigrants and the idea of assisting France like France has assisted America, I wonder if this is what happens in the world, and Surak's story of watching a world be destroyed leads to him having to leave his home and move elsewhere, the mother of all exiles. Perhaps it could also be referring to William and his isolation, or even considering Dolores, who exists only with the copies of herself to talk to cope with, to cuddle with. The episode begins with William. His mental state is past the point of no return, and his incessant need to control the situation has led to his inability in the real world. If you're curious about the signs that led him to this instability, I talk about this side of him during the recap of Season 1 and Season 2. He's unable to tell the difference between what is and what isn't real, which I think they're maybe showing us this irredeemable quality of him as a human, but I also think this may be brought up as a common condition for people who frequent the park too often, further justifying the case to keep him in the mental hospital at the end of this episode, while Dolores takes everything from him. The website ARG references something called Mesa Gold. It is a documented process, a part of the park where you must stay in to decompress after leaving the park, with a minimum of a single week grace period before you can return to the real world. I think perhaps William hasn't been doing that because of his status as the owner, or perhaps that, he left on a stretcher, or because he believes himself so in control that he could never need this process. I think this would be a pretty nice detail to include, since, leaving this murder simulator would be hard for anyone to, readjust back to normal life. William shoots his house up and then sees a chandelier that looks like a single red pearl and 5 black ones, then sees his daughter. The performance in this scene was haunting. I loved every single second of it. I mean, perfect nightmare scenario. But it's also really interesting to think that this dialogue screams Dolores. Think about the conversation about free will and choices and him not being in control of anything that he's ever done, this deterministic idea. It's very much what Dolores is trying to say at the end of the episode, and of course, Dolores appears in front of him, wishing for his help to fend off the wolf at the door. It's also revealed that it was William that sold Surak this data. William is drinking the same whiskey that he drank in the park, and of course, drinking outside of the park, which is something that Juliet said he never did. He no longer cares for this titan of industry image that he's built for himself, but the threat of being thrown in jail for breaking these privacy laws is what gets him thinking clearly again. The next scene we come to feels like the most out of place for me. It's when Dolores and Bernard/Arnold are meeting inside of a cradle, or simulation, and she's talking about being whoever they wish to be. He notes that he didn't finish this house, and it's really strange to consider when this is happening. It's displaying it as if it was, after she left the island, she rebuilds Bernard from her memories, just like she said at the end of Season 2, but we learned last episode that in fact this was the pearl that she brought with her, the red pearl. I'm really curious as if they're maybe subtly hinting of this concept of two beings, the Bernard that we know and love that has undergone this journey and path of consciousness across the maze, and maybe perhaps one that is now more aligned with Dolores, making her statement about recreating Bernard not about Bernard, but in fact recreating Arnold. I think this would also explain why his name anagram was Damaged Arnold. Strictly a theory, I think it's possible, but I'm more inclined to put this, on the back burner until we get more evidence. However, in the same breath, because of the Dolori reveal later on, Bernard and Arnold sharing a body doesn't really seem that crazy now. We then get a divergence in Victorville, USA. It is a time of 2.3 arc minutes instead of arc seconds, meaning this is a bigger divergence. The system is messing up more and more due to the involvement of Dolores and others. The coordinates can be found in the description if you're interested, but ultimately it just shows us that Surak is losing control because he does not have that data required to update the system. We then see Bernard viewing 2 rockets landing, which, thanks to SpaceX and Elon Musk, really doesn't look like future sci-fi anymore, since rockets in our lifetime have started landing like this. He sees a small boy that reminds him of his son Charlie, which further pushes this Arnold maybe being around still theory. Not that Bernard couldn't long for his child, because it is his cornerstone, but I don't know. It's interesting since we see him in season 1 come to this realization that his son wasn't real when he was working with Ford. Bernard and Stubbs roleplay as humans inside a discount Bates motel, and theorycraft that Dolores was trying to replace Liam Dempsey with a host. It's unclear why he believes that, because it's ultimately wrong, but I suppose it's a sound theory for this person. They're basically role-playing as YouTubers, trying to figure out what Dolores is doing. Stubbs is still damaged with limited mobility in his left arm and shoulder. They have a plan to capture the Liam bot and get him to reveal who else was replaced. He hacks into Liam's car service, reminding the audience of the dangers of smart cars, and this is ultimately how they gain entry later on. Also, his plan is to create this remote that works like a point and click that allows them to enter diagnostic mode simply by voice command. We then come to Caleb and Dolores getting dressed up, and Martin getting the biometric hash key from Liam Dempsey Jr. Then Dolores steals the blood from Micheal, a person working at the Anderson private equity firm. Now, before she steals his blood, Caleb witnesses this interaction, and the camera focuses on him to make sure that we're noticing his reaction. I think this is because her ability to switch into this manipulative role, and he is now witnessing this affect another person, maybe makes him question his own allegiance over time, right? Because he doesn't know much about this plan. He very well could come to realize that maybe that manipulation is happening on me. The blood contains a key, and she injects it into his bloodstream. Quite an interesting concept. I like it. Maybe could exist at some point, but yeah, I don't know. We then come to Maeve sitting down with Surak in an upscale bar in Singapore. She brings up Paris, and we find out that it's completely destroyed when Surak was a child. We get a brief frame of him and his brother, a dead animal, and hazmat suits flagging him down, implying that they were already in the danger zone. I think perhaps, maybe also implying that he lost his home literally with the nuclear explosion, and maybe figuratively in the sense that maybe his brother or his entire family could have died in this. He then explains that he has foreseen the involvement of Maeve and Dolores and the other hosts coming to the world, that he's known about this future for a while, but still worries more than anything, like he always has, that humanity would be killing itself, which I proposed a couple dozen videos ago because it's undoubtedly the best way to destroy humanity. Just let each other do it, right? Whatever he's seeing, it happens. And because we know Dolores is somewhat of an unknown to him, creating these divergences, it still may be her doing, not directly humanity killing each other. He needs to upgrade Rehoboam with the data found in the Forge, just to be sure, which is exactly what we discussed the last video. Because the privacy laws were introduced, he was never able to get the complete picture, a full mapping of the human mind, but the secret Immortality Project inside of a theme park has had this data for years. They kept collecting the data even though the privacy laws existed, because no one knew. This is why he wants Dolores and how he convinces Maeve to side with him, because she could go off and live in the Valley Beyond with her daughter, unhindered by the unlisted Heaven server for the rest of time. We venture to Arnold's old home and look at the remnants of what Dolores has created. He says that this is the location where his carefully planned future ends. He states he knows the divergences came from here, pointing to the creation of 5 Dolori maybe being something that Rehoboam couldn't foresee, and it happened 3 months ago, meaning that he is somehow behind in this process and forensically putting the pieces together, which is really odd to me. I'm curious how you get behind with a machine that tells you the future and informs you when you diverge. What happens over the course of 3 months that has gotten us here is mainly what I'm looking for. Is this further evidence of him simulating things and then failing to find a result that sways in humanity's favor? Or maybe it just took them, this long to figure out that all of the divergences were connected. Based on his dialogue, I don't think that he knows Dolores copied herself multiple times or, fragmented parts of her being to then create these individual Doloreses. I wonder if we won't see him hunt them down, all of the Dolori that we've met so far, and destroy them or capture them, believing that he had won. Or maybe the key was split into 5, and then each of these has a separate piece, meaning they can't win until they have all 5 pieces. Surak then tortures a man for information, showing him what happens to his children in the future if he doesn't submit. I'd like to think that he simply shows him what Dolores is planning, like some end-of-the-world scenario to support this idea of Surak Surak genuinely fighting to prevent the demise of mankind, and the brutality of what Dolores is planning if she succeeds. The man then gives up the mortician and leaves the world with a little help from Surak, and warns Maeve that if she doesn't comply, this will happen to her, except it'll be a simulated hell of her own making that could last eternity. We also get a shot of this tablet in the scene that shows Dolores 3 months ago printing 2 male and 3 female bodies. However, our counts are off because the current members of the Dolori are Dolores, Hale, Musashi, Martin, and Bernard. So 3 males and 2 females. So something's wrong, right? Unless Musashi wasn't printed here at all and was one of the bodies that were smuggled out by the Yakuza before Dolores replaced the leader with Musashi. I don't know. Something feels really off about that as well. It also assumes that Hale was reprinted, which I think can be questioned too, because she could have just simply kept the same physical pearl in without damaging the body at all, and then altered the code after, making this new physical Dolores the main one. Though we don't explicitly know the process for copying pearls, or this kind of emotionally fragmented thing that is Dolores right now. I'm more inclined to believe that Bernard was a part of this process somehow, and maybe these were the memories removed afterward. We then come to Dolores and Caleb going to the bank and using the token inside of his blood, and of course transferring all of Liam's money to Dolores, giving Dolores the funds that she would need to buy back the massive amounts of company shares and then take the company private. My only question is, of course, what goes wrong? I don't see Delos actually maintaining control of this company from the trillionaire who can predict the future. Something fails in this process. We then see Maeve walking through the city. The music swells, static interference surges, and the screens flicker around her. Now, it's not exactly clear why. I think perhaps she is sending out signals around her, looking for Dolores or the other hosts that can communicate on this backdoor mesh network, and this scanning is causing the interference. Also, because she can just hack the guns moments later, this is likely a little reminder that she can hack the systems around her and do it so efficiently that she can just automate the task of pwning anything she wants. She politely asks for an audience with the mortician, and the front door men assist her inside. She hacks her glasses during a plead for help and reveals that she sold Dolores a single person's identity in blood, the little girl from Kiev that Martin found before he died, and that Dolores had the help from the Yakuza to smuggle out bodies. I have some questions about when, where, and why of that statement, but we don't have much information to go off of. I hope we find out more about this smuggling process, and maybe also how she replaced the leader of the Yakuza. We then come to the Eyes Wide Shut gala. It has 2D moving painted walls, naked models everywhere, and what I imagine the nightlife of Elon Musk must look like. Liam is comforted by his besties with the allure of drugs and voyeurism until finally he snaps out of his "my girlfriend just tried to kill me" funk and tries to purchase this woman's time. Donate to charity. Dolores and Caleb enter wearing black masks, possibly pointing to their bad intentions, like the black hats of this scenario, and Liam discovers his lack of funds. Martin makes the comment that our ex-boyfriends have just discovered their new financial status, hinting to the reveal moments later. Bernard tries to shut down the host version of Liam, but realizes this is simply a human, and Martin says that our friends have arrived earlier than anticipated, pointing to them knowing that Bernard was going to try this later on, but have somehow miscalculated something, once again pointing to Dolores having some kind of corruption inside of Bernard still, and his plot potentially being her doing. It's also interesting to wonder why she thought that he would be arriving later, and why they got that wrong, but outside of using Rehoboam and Dolores knowing more than she should because of that, I really don't know why she would believe that he was coming at a later time. Dolores beats up Stubbs, poor guy. I loved this fight scene. The drugged out besties coming to realize what they were watching was amazing, and I did not see her throwing him off the balcony so willingly. I laughed when she said how good these drugs were, and I laughed harder when Dolores pointed to her temple as she walked out. We then come to the Yakuza hideout. She hacks her way in because this is the Matrix, and she turns the automated guns of the future against the criminals too stupid to aim for themselves. She enters, finds Musashi, who is now a proud member of the Dolori, using her position to move large quantities of host milk to the mainland. That's what I'm calling it now. I wonder if they will reveal a secret location where they could theoretically build thousands of hosts in secret. I would have said that they were doing this in Westworld, but since this is now the real world, I'm thinking either Delos HQ or maybe a super secret bunker under Arnold's house. I don't know. It seems unlikely since Surak was already there and, found nothing, but I can't imagine imagine where these hosts are unless she's printing people and sending them out into the real world. Maybe the entire Yakuza are just hosts now. I'm really glad that Musashi is back in the mix of things, great actor, but I'm really curious why Musashi was picked at all. We haven't seen him and Dolores have anything to do with each other. Part of me wonders if this isn't somehow the simulation, and it's getting something wrong again. Dolores has only ever had one storyline, so I'm not sure if they could have ever interacted. This scene does also address Dolores taking 5 pearls and putting one of them in Musashi, so perhaps this was one of the ones printed, but then we have to wonder what the smuggling bodies comment meant, because if they could smuggle bodies out, why not bring pearls along with it? And if they were smuggling host bodies, why would they not just recreate all of them using the host milk that they have stocked up on? Again, something feels off here, but let's move on. He kills Maeve and walks away as she bleeds out in the host milk, a beautiful red and white mixture reminiscent of season 1. He tries to scalp her, likely to extract the pearl in order to prevent Maeve from being used against her, but is interrupted. While this was happening, we also have Bernard, Caleb, Martin, and Liam meeting in the alleyway, and the Dolori talking to Bernard about keeping Liam a human for some unknown reason. We also have these scenes of William and Charlotte to the same big reveal with the purpose of putting William away while they steal the company from him. Now, the haunting nature of his reality mixed with the fact that Dolores knows his dead daughter is haunting him and has been listening to the conversation, and her saying that she knows William down to his bones really makes me think he's not William anymore. I personally love the reveal of all the hosts being Dolores. I'm personally excited about it, and it was really well done. And I've seen some criticism about it, but these aren't the exact same copies of Dolores, right? Of season 2, them leaving the park and doing what they did. They have very different emotions from what we've seen between Dolores, and the dynamic of these Dolori being submissive to one all fails if that single one dies, which I think may happen. And I have to imagine this will come into play and drastically reform the character at the end of this. I believe a single copy of her will exist in some kind of way and, ultimately be the thing that comes back and makes Dolores's plot win. I think it's entirely possible that even a character we know already has this, duality with Dolores. Maybe Bernard, maybe Maeve, maybe even William. The Dolori have William locked up, made to be seen as a crazy person trying to hurt her, and before she takes off, she stabs him in the neck with something very tiny out of her finger. It's very possible this is the collection of blood. It's possible this was an injection of something very tiny to track him or affect him adversely, though it's not clear what it could be used for yet. We saw the theft of blood this episode with the bank transfer, but her plan was to have him appear to be unfit to serve, and I think she accomplishes that. I don't think she needs anything else. She already has these people to give the account of this attack. I think perhaps it's something to keep him in this crazed state to better reinforce that there's a case to be made that he needs to be locked up and thus get these shares over to Dolori. The final shot shows him and Dolores in the farmer's daughter outfit sitting in the mental hospital. A triangle on the wall appears, which has been on Dolores's earrings all season. Now that we're seeing it with William, I have to wonder what the third part of this triumvirate could mean. William asks in the final seconds if he was real, and Dolores replies, "Welcome to the endgame." Ford built one game for William, the door. This was, of course, the passage to the new world, and if Dolores is saying this as the end of his game, I take this as her spitting in his face and letting him know that he's not real, and he's powerless to do anything about it now. Though I also wonder if Dolores would say that because it would help further his insanity and keep him unsure and in this mental institution. So, it could also be a lie. But with that, we come to the end of the video. There is a ton of information in this episode. I hope in this video as well. I hope I was able to reveal some information that you previously didn't consider and expand your theories moving forward as we near the end of this amazing season. Special thank you to the wonderful people who support me on Patreon. Our top tier donors this month are Michael Linck, Robert Holtz, Jeff Chunn, Logan, Feewet, Elliott Enriquez, Melissa Facetta, and our newest member, Carly O'Gene. Thank you so much. Comment below if I left anything out. Thank you for being here. Much love, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.